ask them to check that they can hear us, because I'll check if they can hear us.
Yes, hello. I wonder if anyone's there looking. I haven't logged into Twitch at the moment. I find I get distracted if I'm trying to look at Twitch and speak. I'm also finding that my lighting is a little bit bright here. There we go, a
Don't be
little bit
so
more
fussy,
moody,
you
a
old
little bit more
woman.
subtle. Looks like you and I can't.
So that snide insult there was just a way of me checking the sound, and it is working. So we are good. No more testings. We can crack straight into it. So what happened, Rick? I woke up too early. It's the first thing that happened, like 6 a.m. when I was still streaming at midnight yesterday. I must love this streaming lark or something. Then we started talking about, what's our game called? Ball Breaker? Almost.
Yeah, Nutcracker? No,
Nutcracker.
Block Breaker.
Block Breaker. And then we realised that we're calling our blocks bricks in the code. Why blocks and bricks? So we were having a quick look at the code, and then I got all excited about an off-by-one error that didn't exist, and confused by my own code. And I thought, well, that would make a little bit of an interesting warm-up to a stream, wouldn't it, before I dive into harder stuff?
It would, because this is a updated code from 2 or 3 years ago. And there's a little bit of Unity requirement, but there's also a little bit of let's just tidy it up. And I think sometimes in our desire to tidy it up, we didn't actually need to tidy certain things up. So when we look at it, this is mostly what you and I were talking about just now. When we look at it, we're like, why on earth is it +1? Shouldn't it be -1? Then that means we need to clear things up a little bit and just see why that is the case.
Yeah, and we probably need a comment. We only allow comments for whys, not for anything else. So, yeah, I'll get my little annotation out. Now we find out, Rick, whether this annotation ends up on the right place on your screen or not. It generally doesn't in Zoom. I think I'm going to mail them a poo. Because, not a poo as in the character from The Simpsons, but a poo as in a smelly thing. Because this regularly doesn't line up. But let's give it a go. I'm going to circle runtime objects, and we're going to find out where it comes up on your screen. It's a lottery.
Yeah, it circled around about here.
That's beautiful. Let's not do annotations on your screen.
No, I didn't. I'm just messing with you.
Oh, you're messing with me.
I'm messing with you. It came up in the right spot. Well done. You have passed the test of can you circle something on the screen.
Thank you, Rick. I appreciate the patronisation. That always helps at this time of day. I'm just turning my light on just because, darling.
You are a clever kid after all.
How's that?
It's wonderful.
Okay, so I can actually annotate, which is awesome. Bindi, you guys trying to kill me? I have to be up in 3 hours. Sorry, Bindi, you don't have to watch the stream. We're not that interesting, honestly.
Bindi is watching everything. I must watch every last one that these guys do.
Bindi is hardcore, I think. This is cool.
Hardcore to the max.
All right, so just briefly, not that the stream's going to be brief, by the way, so if you guys want to watch this stream, you may have to rewatch it later, but let's just talk about this off-by-one error. So what have we got, Rick? In the inspector, we've got bricks that you need to be able to visualize and see where they are as you're building your level. Therefore, they have sprites on them, right?
Move you out of the way here. Okay, so yeah, we have bricks, and I've just been messing around and changing the size of them, but all the bricks have the same script on them, the same properties. They start off with on our sprite renderer here, whatever they look like, for example, gray tile, and I've then colored the gray tile red, and we have levels of brokenness. So if the ball bonks into it once, it looks a bit more broken. If it bonks into it twice, it looks even more broken until it gets to the point where it is destroyed.
Bonk sprites, they could be called.
Bonk. I do like that name, Bonk Sprite. Let's see if any of these are set up accurately. Okay. I was playing around with the ball launch, so I've broken the ball launch.
That's good.
Note to self.
So this hit sprites thing here then is it a good name? What is it holding? It's holding the array of sprites that only show when the thing has taken a hit. I guess it is. It's all the different sprites for the level of bonkedness. You can't use bonkedness.
Yeah, I mean, we could call it cracked blocks, but then if they're not blocks, someone's doing spheres, or if they're not cracked, but they're, decayed or something. So if we get too explicit, that doesn't quite work.
I think hit sprites, I think it's a question of understanding, isn't it? So then you brought up something else, which is that we create ourselves a state variable of times hit, which will by default, implicitly, it may as well say equals 0 here. Because that's how integers start. So, but I mean, we shouldn't put it.
Are you saying actually, because in general...
I think if you do that, the Visual Studio will give us a warning and say that's totally unnecessary. So I think that probably is unnecessary. But we don't need that times hit equals 0 in the start, do we? Because, as you said, Rick brought that up earlier, why do we need that? Unless we're calling start ourselves, which would be a bit of an odd thing to do, to kind of reinitialize the game, you want to get in your mind that this thing will get reinitialized to 0 when the whole brick entity gets reinstantiated, each time a brick is instantiated. So, and also we've got some funny spacing going on here. So from an OCD point of view, we're starting to clear these spaces between our methods and the brackets up, these sort of things in here. So that's that. So we didn't need that equals 0. That simplifies things. And then where did I get? I went off on one earlier, didn't I? Let's scroll down and have a little look at this. It was this bit. It was about the fact that
hit. So there's the collision that we're calling when the ball hits the brick. We're saying handle hit at that point, and handle hit. This was the line that caused us much consternation.
And only if it's breakable, right? So we're making a sound bonk, and then if the thing's breakable, we handle the hit. Otherwise, we guess we're just completely ignoring the hit. And then this one caused me much consternation initially, because when I first read this guy here, I was like, well, hang on. How can the max hits be the hit sprites dot length +1? Why the +1? Because off by 1 errors are things that give us a lot of problems. And the reason is my mental model at the time when I looked at, even though I wrote this code a while ago, my mental model at the time was that you have a brick, and somewhere in there you have a list of sprites in the inspector from index 0, 1, 2, and so on, which Rick has got there. And these sprites down here, exactly this thing here. And my mental model then was that, well, if it's not been hit, then we should be on sprite index 0. But it's not true. If it's not been hit, we're somewhere else. We're on the default sprite here, right? On the sprite renderer, different to the hit states.
Yeah, so this one here is actually hit number 1.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was the confusion. So I think this is where we have a why comment here. We want to say, if you ever come back to this, it's like, why? Because we also have, I don't know what you want to comment, Rick, but the spirit is that we also have a default sprite, or the sprite renderer holds the unhit sprite, or something like that, Then we get rid of the confusion. Yeah, exactly. That makes sense. So then it all kind of comes together. We increment the times hit the moment we hit. If it's greater than or equal to the max hits, strictly speaking, we could get rid of the greater than, because people would ask the question in a very valid way, how could it ever get greater than? Well, it can't get greater than. With an integer, you're pretty safe to just say equals. So the greater than is just, I would say it's confusing. What do you think about that, Rick?
Yeah, it's one of those edge case situations where if for some reason the ball was going so fast that it hit twice on a frame, that's not possible. Actually, you know what? If we had 2 balls and they both struck a block simultaneously, then you could go over the number of max hits. You could.
So I think actually that it is better to put a greater than and then to maybe a y and say in case 2 collisions in 1 frame, something like that. Exactly. Nice comment. It's even bringing our attention here to what bit we're commenting. Okay, cool. And then I don't like load sprites, because we don't just load sprites. You had a better name for that. What are we doing if we do it's load next or display next?
It's not, because load's such a loaded thing, because we're not loading a level or a scene. We're just show next
hit sprite.
Damage level or damage sprite, or show next
hit sprite, I think.
Yeah, hit sprite.
Because it's what you're doing, isn't it? It's an array of hit sprites, and show next hit sprite or something. So I think that's it, really. I think that's probably all we wanted to show. Let's just pop down to that method once you've renamed it, the show next hit sprites, and have a look at that. Because I also started getting excited about that, and then realized I didn't need to be. Which is, why is the sprite index the times hit -1? Well, it makes sense. Remember, you've got a sprite up here in your sprite renderer, and then you have your hit state 0, index 0, hit state index 1. Now it makes sense. The sprite index you want to go for is times hit -1. So when you get hit once, we've been hit once, we want sprite index 0. When we've been hit twice, we want sprite index 1. Hit sprite index 1. So it makes sense. Maybe worth commenting, maybe not at this stage, because by now reading down the class, hopefully somebody's already got this idea, and we're away. We're fine.
So then we know that if Like, can we actually call show next hit sprites if the number of hits is at 0? Because in this case, it would make it a little bit silly to say if the times hit is 0, then the sprite index is -1. It'll possibly throw an error, but we can't actually show next hit sprites until we hit, right? So
Yeah.
that's up here. So there's in no situation can we say that this will be 0 hits, because we don't.
That's so there we've pre-incremented, and this
Although,
is where it can get a
sorry,
little bit.
Sorry, I stand corrected. We start this, we initialize it at 0.
Yeah.
So,
But
we're not calling show next hit sprites until it's actually hit.
yeah, you can never call show next hit sprites until after. If you just scroll back up and hold for 1 sec, you can never call show next hit sprites until after you've incremented times hit. So it's a little bit order sensitive there. But I like incrementing times hit immediately you get into handle hit, because you have been hit. You know, if you're going to then destroy yourself immediately, fine. If you're going to load the next hit sprite, fine. But you have immediately been hit. So you could I would even say there's an argument for move that up 1. Because arguably the very first thing that happens when you handle a hit is that you need to just take account of the fact because this is an instance variable now, which is good in that you can use it everywhere, but it's bad in that, it's hard to keep track of. It's across the whole class. So yeah, the very first thing that happens is that. And then you make yourself like this temporary variable, max hits, which is literally just taking this stuff, isn't it? And just sticking it in here, right? It's just putting that in there. You could arguably not even have you could try, Rick, just put documenting on it.
I do, because then we're going to need a comment. When we're looking at this, we're saying, why on earth are we looking at the length +1? What does that mean? I think having max hits in there does help us understand what it is.
And it makes this very semantic, right? This is very, what does this if statement do? And by the way, guys, cool methods. This whole method, handle hit, its pure job, you can see what its job is to handle a hit, it's to make a decision based on the number of hits. That's it. And then it goes off and that stuff gets done elsewhere. Bindi, in his tired state, is asking a question, which is, I heard. Oh, okay. So we were...
this was, I think this is something for you and I to talk about in an instructor hangout, and then we might loop into it in a live stream as well. But in my ramble after you left this morning or your evening, I was just talking about how we don't use public variables anymore. We use serialize.
Well, do we? They don't have to be a single piece. Try just doing that right now. We can do both and use that as a segment for the instructor hangout. Do you think that would work?
And then splice it in. What's the recording
splice it in, so the instructor hangouts just becomes a series of fades.
Yeah, what's the Zoom/Twitch recording like? Is it up to the quality we want it to be?
Doesn't matter. I can just Camtasia it now anyway, and then put it in your thing. We can start making the instructor.
You just went
That's
audio.
cool. And if what we said wasn't clear, then
no, you're back.
Should be back. So Zoom is going out there. I'm coming in here. Okay, so that should be good. I presume they can still hear me. I'm just going to check that the stream is still good. 1 second. Then I can turn that on and we can get pure Camtasia quality recording. Apart from my res is off. But it doesn't matter for an instructor hangout, does it? We can go 1080p for those. What do you think? We could try it. I'll try it without much overhead. Let's just record it and see. If it's no good, we'll just do it again later.
Yep.
Sounds all good. I can hear that. So, okay, a little bit of production then. Let's just go live. Because the nice thing is, then we can credit Bindi. So let's try that. I'll do a lead in. So in this short section of the instructor hangout, Bindi, one of our courses, and as Rick's going through and remastering this course, you are removing all public variables. And why is the basic answer or question, isn't it, Rick?
It is, yeah, because in terms of exposing to the inspector, if we have, say here, we've got audio crack, this is not necessarily the good file. We're talking about something else, but that is available in this inspector when we serialize the field. But if you typed public, so instead of this, if we said public, it would also be available in the inspector for us to manipulate. Why do serialize field? Why not just do public? That was the question, or that is the question.
That is the question. So public does two things, which isn't so good, which means that brick.crack equals and change its audio clip, which wouldn't be so good. Firstly, you'd have to rename crack. It would need to be brick.crack sound, because otherwise you wouldn't even know it was a reach into this brick and change stuff about it. So that wouldn't be very good. Like if you had, as Rick showing, public int player lives, then why you do that on the brick, I don't know. But not good.
For illustrative purposes. Yeah. I mean, or maybe more relevant here is public integer of score. Then if we're over in, say we're in the brick at the moment, because we're working in block breaker here. If we were then over in ball, for example, and at this point we wanted to say, let's update the score from in the middle of the ball, and then over in also we had all these areas where we can change a public variable that stores all of that score, then it can be very confusing as to where we've changed things, because we can't just click in here and say, okay, where has score been changed? We need to go and dig around and try to find where that's the case.
Yeah, objects should be responsible for managing their own state, and if we start doing this sort of thing, then any old object can change this brick's state, which makes it really hard to reason about. So that's why we don't do it. It is protecting the state of the bricks to make sure that if it's being changed, it's only being changed by methods that are inside this brick class, and we can put conditions in here to check that that is okay. So you could request that a brick gets broken from outside, from a different object, but whether it does or doesn't, or how it handles itself, is up to it, not up to external code.
There's also, because
sometimes their own state.
Sometimes we do want one script to be able to talk to another script. So in here, for example, maybe public int score is not a good example, but if we were saying...
The countable bricks is, though.
Sorry?
The countable bricks is, we have this level object that is keeping track of how many bricks. So we go and find in this class right here. Yeah, I mean, exactly. The level object has a serialized field, breakable bricks, and it starts as 0, whether we need to or not. So if we scroll down a bit, we don't need to add anything new. If we just scroll down, there's a method in here that register breakable bricks. There you go, register breakable breakable bricks plus plus. So instead of making breakable bricks public and just adding one to it from the outside, you've got something more meaningful, which is, hey, level dot register breakable brick. So it's up to the level how it deals with that. It happens to just do something really simple, which is just increment its count. But it could do something much more complicated and protect against certain conditions, etc. So that's a perfect example of encapsulating that.
So from any other script, we can say, please do this thing. Please call register breakable brick. We can do that from anywhere, but within here, it decides what that means. It decides how it's increased or decreased or changed. So it's controlled within this particular class.
And another toy example is if you had a car class, and the car from the outside, a simple car that you can steer like a radio control car, only has 2 inputs. +1 or -1 accelerate brake, or you can go steer right +1, steer left -1. That's it. Now, the state of the car includes things like its speed and its direction and its motor temperature and all sorts of other state. It never makes any sense to just say to a radio control car, hey, set your speed to X. You just can't do that. I mean, you physically can't do it. You can't instantaneously set its speed to anything. Now, all you can do is control its throttle and its steering and its speed and its direction and its temperature and its orientation. All of that stuff is a result of those inputs. So that's a much clearer example of where it wouldn't even make any sense physically to say, hey, car, set your speed to boom. No, you can request that speed and it could have a cruise control. The car could have a set cruise control to 80, but it's still got to accelerate there or brake down there. So you don't set the state of things directly.
And one of the key reasons that we might be in the past creating something as public, but now doing it as serialized field, is we want to connect 2 things that aren't in the same place. So for example, if we do serialized field of type paddle, and we'll call it player one paddle, then we can then go into the inspector. If we save that, go into the inspector and drag the paddle into that field that will now be in the inspector.
Yeah, so that's the other thing it's doing, is making it serializable, just showing it in the inspector, yeah? From a architectural point of view, the reason we don't want, if you have these different game entities, you have like a brick and a level and a ball and an etc. and another etc. What we don't want is them all to just be able to talk to each other. It's not good if this can set everything can set the properties on everything else. Look at the spaghetti. We have n squared roughly. It's actually n is the number of things into n minus 1 all over 2. But who cares? There's a lot of different pairs in between these things. We don't want that. What we want is we want a specifically wired up set of method calls. We want the brick to be able to register itself with the level only, but the level can't talk to the brick necessarily. We want the ball maybe to communicate with the brick, but maybe not the other way around. We just want a handful of all the possible interactions available, not all of them. The problem is if you make everything public, everything is possible, and everything being possible, it means that it's very hard to reason about anything. So in a nutshell, that's why we use SerializeField rather than public, because it does only one thing, which is we serialize the inspector without having the nasty side effect of making everything open to everything else.
Excellent.
So that, my Ricky friend, might be good enough for government work. I don't know if we're doing government work here, or indeed whether that even worked. But if I can make this recording stop, which at the moment I cannot. Oh, there you go. Where do you want that? Resilio courses, Unity 2D. I don't know why I have a Unity 2. That worries me a lot. Block breaker. I'm just going to put it in the root of block breaker if that's okay.
Yeah, that's good.
Must remember my L in public when I write that.
Public haircut.
Yes, a public haircut. We need to be very careful that it's a public haircut. Okay, good. So that Camtasia file is will be on its way to you when I re-enable. In fact, I'll re-enable Resilio now, and we'll see if the Twitch screen can handle that. We use Resilio for sharing files, by the way, guys. Pretty cool. It used to be BitTorrent Sync. It's a peer-to-peer file sharing thing. So, Rick, is that you good? Was that helpful?
Yeah, thank you.
No workers. Only 16 people on, which indicates that this is not the most popular time of day. Also, this is a completely unscheduled stream. And also, it's got the wrong name to it. The
Foundations of Dialogue. Is that what it says?
Well, it says the Foundations of Dialogue. It isn't really. What I'll do is I'll stop the stream, rename that video on demand to just a quicker, shorter, sharper name, and then I'll stream again as episode 5B, because we're now in between streams with the RPG, and I'll keep building out the dialogue system. I did actually do some work on the dialogue system yesterday, Rick, so yeah, that's cool. But I won't derail you. You're focused on something else, so.
Yes.
Enjoy your production. If you want to leave your Zoom on and just mute yourself, that's cool. I'll just show them your ugly mug occasionally just to entertain them.
Yeah, I might pop back on before you and I do our instructor hangouts, but for now, I'll see if I can knuckle down and get this video done.
Okay, knuckle down, knucklehead, and I'll see you soon.
Adios.
Funny man. All right, guys, I'm going to go offline for just 2 minutes, rename that video on demand, come back on with the right name. So see you soon.